the China spying case, which collapsed. I don't know. I've been following it this week. I was sat there in PMQs. I listened to the Prime Minister's statement about why this case collapsed. I listened to the back and forth, Kemi Badenoch, the interjections from Tom Tugendhat, James Cleverly. I've read the witness statements that were released at 9:30 last night, and I am still none the wiser about what exactly happened.
Well, I think this is one of those weird stories, Rachel, where at one level, it is incredibly technical, complicated, mind-dazing, full of acronyms, and who gives a monkeys about it. And at another level, it's really, really important because it does seem as if the Chinese state, the Chinese Communist Party, is so deeply interpenetrated into our political and economic system and the secrets not just of government, but of all our cleverer companies and stealing those secrets, that it is a really big national issue.
Well, what we learnt this week from PMQs and from the statements is it all seemed to hinge on 3 witness statements given by the Deputy National Security Advisor, a guy called Matthew Collins, who's one of these civil servants who's now become a headline name, which is something that you never want to happen if you are a government official, who gave 3 statements to the CPS about these individuals accused of spying. One of those was in December 2023, so under the Conservative government, and then 2 of them this year, one in February and one over the summer. Now, Starmer claimed in PMQs earlier this week that you would see from those statements that the government, the Labour government, had not put any pressure at all on the case to take a softer line on China. And in fact, when we got those statements, we've got Matthew Collins being really quite emphatic that China does pose a security threat. He talks about Beijing representing a threat to the national security of the UK and talks about espionage and uses some language that you would imagine if you were the CPS. It's hard to see what it was that they were looking for in terms of, does this classify China as an enemy or not? The
problem we have here, Rachel, is that you are not a lawyer and I am not a lawyer. But clearly there was some legal barrier which they needed even stronger language to go ahead with the prosecution, and they didn't get it. We should, remind people that the basic charge here is that the government, because they wanted to be soft or easy on China for trading and economic reasons, deliberately collapsed a trial of 2 people alleged to have spied on MPs. That's the charge. And Starmer's response to that is, I didn't. It was all down to this guy, Matthew Collins, who was the Deputy National Security Advisor, nothing to do with us at all. And he had a very, very good day, I thought, or very good half an hour or 40 minutes or so in the House of Commons yesterday when we were watching him. And then lots of questions about exactly the language he had used came bubbling up again. And I think there is real jeopardy in this story still for the Prime Minister, on 2 grounds in particular. One, he said in response to Kemi Badenoch that Matthew Collins, the person you were discussing with the mildly successful beard he's got, had not had any conversations with Downing Street or the Home Secretary or the National Security Advisor himself, Sir Jonathan Powell. And if that's the case, it's odd that he did this really quite big thing of not providing exactly the words that were expected and thus allowing the trial to collapse without talking to anybody around him. That seems odd, put it that way. Starmer had better be right about that. And secondly, Keir Starmer confirmed a story in the Sunday Times that there had been a meeting involving Jonathan Powell and other officials to discuss all of this, but said they hadn't looked at the evidence for it. In which case, what was the meeting about and what followed from the meeting? I think there are still questions here.
Yes, that secret meeting that was apparently so important that Jonathan Powell and other top-ranking officials had to attend it, but not important enough that anything at all of relevance was discussed. Still questions there. In terms of the words that Starmer used on that first point about whether or not there had been conversations with Collins about his evidence, he said no minister or special advisor played any role. And then later Tom Tugendhat asked him, what political direction did the government give to their officials before they went to give evidence? And Starmer said, absolutely none. Now, one of the reasons that's odd is because a line that appears in the statements, the subsequent ones, the ones that took place under the Labour government, did refer to Labour's policy of China and the positive economic links, and that line that David Lammy liked to use about compete, challenge and cooperate. So there are words in the statement that do refer to the current government's position.
They could, of course, have come from the official involved simply reading the manifesto or reading things that had been said in the past rather than pressure from Jonathan Powell or Downing Street or anything like that. But I agree that is one of the big question marks still hovering over this. In Starmer's defence, he prosecuted Boris Johnson on other things across the House of the Commons in a very lawyerly, detailed way, and he understands this game and the danger of being boxed in. So you say something to the House of Commons in the heat of the moment, which is not true, and then you are accused of lying to the House of Commons, and it's a potential resignation offence. He understands this. So because he used such clear language, and there was no case of pressure, perhaps he knows very, very clearly that there wasn't, and he is confident that he can defend himself.
Well, just zooming out from the details of it, isn't the big issue here that both the previous government under multiple Conservative prime ministers and the current Labour government is walking a very difficult line with China, because we know that the Chinese government is attempting or succeeding to spy on us. We know about espionage incidents. We know about attempts to hack. We know that there are serious concerns raised about this mega embassy that the Chinese government wants to build slap bang in the city of London in a way that other security experts are warning could pose real risks, including the Americans. But at the same time, we want China's investment. We want them to continue to spend lots of money in our universities, in our infrastructure, and even if we wanted to wean ourselves off Chinese technology, they are so dominant in spaces like green tech and electronics and things that we're just not in a position to do that. So both the Conservatives and Labour have had this balancing act of talking really tough on China, but not so tough that there are economic repercussions. And that's the tension that's apparent in the language about whether or not we designate them a threat or an enemy.
I spoke to Tom Tugendhat this week, who's the former security minister and one of the guys at the centre of this. He indirectly employed one of the people who is alleged to have been involved in the spying case. And he made the point that this is, in a sense, less about the interpenetration of the British state and British politics and more about what's going on in business and technology and science. So lots and lots of really important breakthroughs, technological shifts and so forth happening across British industry, what's left of it, are being seized and stolen and used straight away by the Chinese. We have a company that does something really clever about composite materials and the blades of wind farms or whatever it is. They get that and they can do it almost immediately. And so therefore it's really about our economic weakness, and our vulnerability to commercial spying is as important as anything that's going on in politics. Because if you look at the witness statements and you look at the evidence that we've seen so far, the information that was being passed to the Chinese Communist Party about British politics is pretty low-grade stuff. You know, this person might be appointed to cabinet next time round. This person is likely to stand down from the Tory leadership because of this.
It's very gossipy, isn't it?
It's the kind of thing that you and I, frankly, chat about over coffees in the House of Commons every day of the week. I mean, now, no doubt there's more serious stuff there as well that we don't know about, but it doesn't seem absolutely sort of crucial, essential stuff. What really worried me this week, I have to say, was an interview the Times did with Dominic Cummings, who had been Chief of Staff under Boris Johnson, and who alleged that virtually all the deepest and most dangerous secrets that the British state have been taken and compromised by the Chinese years ago. They actually acquired one of the servers or the systems on which the most secret information was being stored.
Yeah, they managed to acquire the data hub that our classified information was stored on.
And so they have absolutely everything. Now, whether that means they know where our nuclear submarines are and all the rest of it, I don't know. I mean, the kind of language that's been used by officials and ministers to describe this is, forgive my language, a catastrophic fuck-up, that kind of thing, a really, really serious breach. So it may be that, we're running around, we're talking about exactly why this particular trial collapsed, we're, throwing accusations across the House of Commons, but actually the horse has bolted and is, trundling across the plains of China long ago.
Okay, so big questions still for lots of people to answer about why this case collapsed, and a bit of pressure on Starmer given the language that he used. But in terms of the big picture, there's a lot else going on with regards to national security, our relationship with China in economic and foreign policy terms. And I think we're waiting for the decision on whether to approve the super embassy towards the end of this month. So that's fallen on the desk of Steve Reed.
It has, and it's been delayed. And the idea that it's a planning decision, that Steve Reed, as the senior planning minister, should take on planning grounds seems absolutely absurd, because this would be the biggest embassy in Europe, an absolutely central hub of Chinese projection and power, not just in Britain, but in Europe. It's said to have basement rooms where Chinese Hong Kong dissidents who are really, really worried about their own safety and have been pursued on the streets of Britain by undercover Chinese official police might be detained and interned and taken back home, back to China. There are real concerns about how it would allow electronic eavesdropping at a new level, not just in British politics, but of course the City of London right next door. So there are lots of big issues, and they are national security issues. They are not planning issues. And the fact that this decision has been delayed is, I think, a promising and good thing. I hope very much that people in government are looking really, really hard and just stating all the information that come out in the last 48 hours about the level of Chinese spying in the UK and what the Chinese are up to.